Hello and welcome to Archbell YouTube. I am so happy to have you here practicing with me, and it is so wonderful to share your energy as we roll out our mats. All you will need is your very good self and your wonderful body and a mat, and perhaps towards the end maybe a wall or the side of the couch or the side of the bed, because we're going to take our legs up the wall before we come down into Shavasana, which is always just such a wonderful way to relax. And yeah, so let's just get started without further ado. You don't need me nattering on at you. So we are going to start in child's pose to begin with. Now you can have two options. We can either keep our knees quite close together and release our forehead down to the mat, and our arms come out behind us either side of the feet, palms facing up. Or if that feels a little bit uncomfortable on the hips or the back, we can widen the knees, bring the big toes together, sink the hips any amount back, walk the hands out in front of us, chest lowers to the floor, forehead lowers to the floor. So taking your time to find that comfortable place, or maybe it's not completely comfortable, but taking your time to settle into your chosen pose. And as you release down, let that exhale go. And wherever you are, beginning to tune into the breath, beginning to tune in to your own rhythm, and really feel that breath as it comes down to the lungs, expanding the front of the chest, expanding into the back of the body, widening the shoulder blades, that 360 breath all the way around the lungs. Letting the mind filter out everything it took for you to arrive here. Letting the mind settle down into simply breathing. Simply focusing on that breath. So often our mind can be really busy, jumping from one thing to the next. And when we move into our practice, it really is a time to give the mind something to do. When the mind has time to wander around, we can always bring it back to focusing on the breath. I always think it's a really special way to get the mind to focus on just one thing, asking it to notice the breath. Feel that expansion as you inhale. Feel the letting go as you exhale. Just noticing now if the body feels like it's settling down, if the mind feels like it's relaxing in some way. Being an observer of your own body, being an observer of the mind. As we move through our practice, have an intention to keep bringing the mind back to what you're doing. Bringing the mind back into the body, noticing where the feet may be, where the hips may be, noticing how the poses feel, noticing perhaps where the mind escapes the pose and wanders off somewhere else, and having an intention to bring it back to the pose, back to the moment, giving the mind something to do. If our hands are back beside our feet, stretching them out in front of you now, beginning to walk the hands a little further forward. And as we do, plant the hands into the mat. Inhale, lift the hips, lift the body, rising into a tabletop. Readjust the knees so that they are beneath the hips, hands beneath the shoulders, and just taking some circles with the hips. So we're bringing the hips forward, rolling them back, and letting these circles be small. And it doesn't matter which direction you're going, because we'll go in the opposite direction in a moment. And letting the circles expand out, creating that 360 with the hips. And maybe the breath moves in time, inhaling as we draw forward, exhaling as we move through the back. And noticing how we are circling into the wrists as well. We are circling into the knees. And the bigger the movement, slowly building into those spaces. As you draw the hips back, begin to reverse that direction, starting slow with the circles. Asking the mind to focus on this circular movement. Where can you feel it in the body? So I mentioned the wrists and the knees. And obviously the hips are moving, but where do you feel it in the body? Is there any particular spaces that feel this movement more deeply? And letting those circles get a little bigger. As the hips circle back, coming into that neutral position. We're going to tuck the toes, lift the knees, exhale up the hips and back. Walking and pedaling out the feet. Stretching through the spine, lengthening right up to the tailbone. Push into the hands, really grounding the palms, the fingertips into the floor. And taking your time to pedal. We're not in a rush. And again, asking the mind to notice, where does the body feel this for you? Keeping it focused inwards. Keeping it focused on something other than runaway thoughts. Then taking a deep breath in, lift the hips, lift the heels, push into the hands as we exhale. Lengthen it down through the back of the legs. Heels sink down towards the mat, but our goal isn't to reach the mat. It's simply to send that energy downwards. Holding stillness in our downward dog for a breath or two. Exhale, release the knees to the floor and tuck the toes. Allow yourself to readjust so that you can come into a child's pose. So again, wide legs or knees together, whatever feels good for you. allowing the body to integrate that movement, allowing the mind a moment to not need to focus on anything and just seeing what it does. Where does it wander off to? Or is it beginning to feel quieter than it was at the start? It's important as you move through your practices that you take opportunities to check in and notice any changes without judgment. There's no right or wrong way to feel through our practice, but just allowing ourselves that time to check in. Inhale, lifting back up through our tabletop. Readjust the knees, coming back to center. Take a deep breath in as we do, and lift the tailbone, lift the chin, chest, let the belly drop. As we exhale, round through the spine, tailbone draws in, chin to chest. Our cat and cow. Moving with your own breath, flexing through the spine. Seeing if we can draw that movement from the tailbone and roll it through the spine up to the crown of the head. Can we stay with this fluid movement of the breath and the body? Finishing in a high cat. Coming back to center. I'm going to tuck the toes. Take a deep breath in. As we exhale, lift the knees. Exhale it up into our downward dog. But we're not going to stay here. We're going to fluidly move. Inhale, coming forward a little. Shoulders over the wrists. As we exhale, bend into those knees. Roll the hips open back into our downward dog. Inhale, moving forward. Exhale, rolling back. And keep flowing with your own breath. Let the inhale and the exhale move through you. Let the hips almost show us how that breath feels, how fluid it is. Last one. Finding a moment of stillness at the end of our exhale in our downward dog. Exhale, release the knees to the floor. Untuck the toes. We're going to inhale, draw the right arm forward out in front of us, stretch through the fingertips. Feel a lengthening through the whole of the right side of the body. From the hip, through the side of the body, through the side of the ribs, through the armpit, and out through that right arm. Exhale, release the arm. Inhale, stretch through the left arm, reaching it out in front of us. Stretch those fingertips away. Feel the left side of the body. Notice the work that the right hand and arms needing to do to hold us steady, finding stability. Exhale, release the left hand. Inhale, stretch the right leg out behind us, coming onto the tiptoes, pushing through the heel. When it feels comfortable, you can either stay here or inhale, flex through the foot, Lift the foot up to hip height. Stretch it out behind us. Can you keep the weight even in both hands, right and left, so the body is steady? The mind is focusing on what it needs to activate in the body. Exhale, release that right leg. Draw it back in. Left leg steps out behind us. Flex through the heel on the tippy toes. Either staying here, or if it feels comfortable, inhale, lifting that heel, stretching out through the left leg. Noticing if the weight may have shifted in the hands. Release, exhale, draw it back in. We're going to rock the hips from side to side. Sitting back on the heels, release out the wrists, give them a nice roll. Making fists with the hands, rolling into the wrists in one direction and then the other. Hands on the shoulders. Rolling the elbows forward, up and back. Releasing any tension in the arms that we may have created as we were holding the body steady. And then reverse the direction. Elbows come up and back out behind us, over and under. And shake out the arms. Ooh. Going back to our tabletop. Finding that strength in our hands, grounding into the mat. We're going to send the left foot back, coming onto those tiptoes. Steady the body here. Where's the mind? What's it focusing on? And then on an inhale, we're going to stretch the right arm out in front of us. And either staying here, or who would like to add some extra challenge to the mind to focus. As we inhale, we lift the left leg into the air. We're stretching all the way from the center of the body out through the hand, out through the foot. This long diagonal stretch. The body is staying centered. Last breath. Release the foot. Release the hand. Draw that left knee back in. Give the hips a rock from side to side. Don't forget to breathe and smile. Coming back to center. We're going to send the right foot out behind us, flexing through the heel. Take a deep breath in and a full exhale out. Then inhale, stretching away the left hand out in front of us. Steady the mind, steady the body, find that stability. Making the mind focus. On an inhale, we can lift that right leg into the sky. Keep the foot flexed. Finding that long stretch from the fingertips down to the foot, through the body. Release the right foot. Release the hand, draw the knee in. Rock the hips out. And then inviting you to come back into child's pose, our balasana, whichever option feels good. Exhale and sink it back, sink the hips back, let the chest and head draw down to the mat. And an invitation to really let it go. Let the body rest and surrender in between the work and the focus. As you inhale, lifting the hips back up, descend to the knees. We're going to tuck the toes. Exhale it open out into our downward dog. I quite like to walk the heels up and down a little, and as I do, push the hips back to find some extra length in the sides of the body. Extra length in walking that tailbone further away from the crown, lengthening the whole of the spine. Looking up at the hands. We're going to walk the feet, little baby steps, all the way up to the hands. Bend into the knees any amount, let the body roll down, let the head hang towards the mat. Release the hands onto the backs and let them rest on the mat. Coming into a ragdoll. And if it feels a little uncomfortable, sometimes bringing a sway and a focus onto movement rather than stillness can feel quite nice for the mind and the body. But don't be afraid to take a few breaths in the stillness as well and possibly face that uncomfortable feeling. Reminding yourself that you are safe and you can breathe and focus through this. Bring the hands onto the shins. Begin inhaling and rolling up. Keep the hands connected to the legs all the way up. As you reach the top, roll the shoulders back and down. Lift the head. Lift the gaze out in front. Let the arms hang either side of the body. Palms facing in towards the thighs. And then we're going to give everything a little bit of a shake. Give the legs a shake, give the hips a shake, give the arms a shake. Even the head. Shake it all out. Whew. And then coming back to the top of our mat. Feet a comfortable distance apart. Palms facing out in front of us now. Relax off the shoulders, finding our mountain pose again. Steadying the mind with a breath or two. Bring the hands together at prayer at the heart. Right and left meeting together. Inhale, rising up. Keep the hands together, looking up to the sky. Exhale, draw the hands down through the body, coming into a fold. Inhale, halfway lift. lift the chest, lengthen the spine, exhale, release, step it back into our downward dog. Here comes the cat to join us. As we inhale, we're going to lift that right leg any amount into the sky. It really doesn't matter how high it comes, we're just stretching through the toes, out behind us, lengthening from that right hip all the way down to the leg. Looking up at the hands, we're going to step that right foot forward and bring the foot in between the hands, so however you need to get there. Then we're going to drop the back knee, untuck the back toes. And maybe it might feel nice to send this left knee a little bit further back and create a slightly more intense stretch into the front of that left hip flexor. But just noticing again exactly where it is you feel this in your body. Knee is over the right ankle. And maybe if we walk that right foot a little further forward, we could feel the hips have a bit more space to sink in. But that's only an option. Staying where feels good for you. I always like to come up on the fingertips because I feel like it gives me more space to send the chest forward, so we're not sinking in and resting on that right thigh. We're finding some strength and stability, focusing the mind in this low lunge Andiasana. Option when we inhale to bring the hands to the right thigh, or inhale them all the way up to the sky. Focus on a lengthening from the hips, up through the side of the body, up through the arms, out into the sky, through the fingertips. I'm going to hold this pose for a few breaths. See, can we allow the mind to find space in this pose? Focus on keeping that right foot grounded into the mat. Left shin grounded into the mat. Find our stability. Final breath here. As you inhale, release the hands either side of the foot, wherever the hands were. Tuck the back toe, lift the back knee. Rock and step it back into our downward dog. And it might feel nice to pedal it out. Before finding some stillness in our downward dog. And walking those hips up and back. Then on an inhale, we're lifting that left leg into the sky. Opposite side to what we did last time. Feel that stretch from the left hip. Up the thigh, through the shin, out through the foot. Stretching it away. Then looking up at the hands, stepping that left foot forward, dropping the right knee, untucking the right toes, and taking that time again to just find a position that feels comfortable. So walking the right knee back any amount, walking the left foot forward. We find that space in the hips. Hands can come to fingertips, chest draws forward, shoulders move back and down. And letting yourself notice how the mind's doing now. Is it holding space? Is it finding something to focus on as we hold a little bit of stillness in this pose? And then when you're ready, on an inhale, hands to the left thigh or rising all the way up into the sky. Reaching up through those fingertips, hips are sinking down towards the mat. Finding strength and stability in our pose. Finding the stillness too. Actually notice how we feel. Where do you feel the work in this pose? Last breath. As you exhale, release the hands either side of the foot. Tuck that back toe, lift that back knee, step it back into our downward dog. Pedal it out if it feels nice. And then find a breath or two of stillness. Then we're going to walk the feet halfway up to the hands and cross at the ankles and come to seated. Lovely. And then inviting you to roll down onto the mat. Knees bent, arms out to the side, palms facing up. Slight tuck of the chin, lengthen up through the back of the neck, let the spine be long on the mat. And take some rocks of the knees from side to side. Feel that sensation in the lower back as you roll from one hip to the other. And the head can turn in the opposite direction to the knees, finding that sensation in the upper back slightly, in the neck itself. And inviting you to notice, how fast is your rock? Are you on a mission to go from side to side? And can you begin to really slow that down? As I began rocking there, I was going quite fast, at quite a pace, and it wasn't until I actually asked myself or brought my mind back to focusing on what it was I was doing rather than what I was saying, is when I noticed the pace of that movement needed to really slow down, to feel more gentle, more easeful on the body. And that is the power of focusing the mind on what we're doing, bringing it back, giving it something to really spend its time on. Coming back to center, I'm going to invite you to bring the knees into the chest and give yourself a hug. It might feel nice as well to let the knees draw out and then squeeze them back in once or twice. And then I'm going to invite you to come back up and we will do legs up the wall. So I will show you legs up the wall first, and then I will show you legs on the couch as well, so that you have some options, because you can do it with a chair too. So I would suggest having maybe the blanket and a pillow handy. So I quite like to put a pillow under the hips once I'm up. So the best thing to do is to bring the side of the body right up against the wall. And then, there's no good way to get into this, to be honest. It looks pretty ugly, to be fair, but it'll feel divine. So rolling down, you're then going to bring your legs up and kind of shimmy round to the wall so that your legs are then resting against the wall. And it can feel really nice to lift up the hips and pop a cushion under that lower back, under the hips. And then you can bring the arms out to the side, palms facing up. Legs are supported fully by the wall. And just let everything trickle down from the toes, reinfusing those legs, encouraging the blood to flow, and just breathing here. So if that's where you got to, great. Pause me and stay there for a second. And if you're going to use the couch, and please, the living room is actually tidy, then you can do the same with the side of the bed or a chair. You'll bring the legs right up so that the chair or the couch is supporting underneath the knees. And you can actually let the lower legs rest on the space, or you again can still bring them up into the air. There's just nothing to support them, so it doesn't always feel as good, but you just always bring them and lower them down. And this feels really nice as well, this position. So whichever position you're choosing, legs up the wall, get comfy, and we shall spend a few moments here. And even closing down the eyes if you maybe haven't already. Letting out a few deep, full breaths out of the mouth. Giving yourself permission to relax and allow yourself to really go into this space, into this pose. And see what the mind does. See where it finds itself resting. And if the mind is still troublesome and wondersome, focus on that breath. Give the mind something to listen to, something to be thinking about. having a little scan from the soles of the feet down through the lower legs, the knees, the thighs, the back of the thighs, the hips, and noticing any areas where you can release a little more. Let the tension go. Ask the muscles to relax. You can really stay here as long as you wish. Feel free to turn me off. But if our legs are up the wall, we're going to bring the soles of the feet onto the wall and let yourself kind of roll over to one side as the feet and the knees come down. And very gently lift yourself back up, readjust yourself on the mat and come down into our Shavasana. So legs up the wall is super lovely, super relaxing. But coming to fully lie on our mat in Shavasana, letting the feet roll out to the sides, letting the arms part away from the body. Just takes away any of the remaining tension and allows you to completely surrender, completely sink inwards, move into a space where there is nothing else to think about, nowhere else to be, not anything else you should be doing. You're exactly where you are, exactly where you're meant to be, resting the body, the mind, and your soul. Gently deepening that in-breath now, feeling the flow of the breath moving through the body. Feel the flow of that in-breath moving all the way down to the feet, fluidly moving without any stopping or blockages. Free to rejuvenate the body, bringing fresh oxygen to every cell. Bring the hands and just rest them somewhere on the body. Just let them reconnect. Feel the weight of the palms touching you. And then begin to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Might feel nice to bring the soles of the feet onto the mat and rock the knees. Nice and gently from side to side. And then when you're ready, rolling over onto one side and just pausing here for an extra breath. Maybe let the eyes begin to open. Let a smile find its way onto the lips. Let that smile spread through the whole of the body. Let it spread into the mind. And when you're ready, bringing yourself back to seated. Hands meet in prayer at the heart. Gentle bow of the head, honoring ourselves, honoring this time we took out of our busy lives, this time we dedicated to truly loving ourselves on the mat. This time we've taken to help train the mind to focus into the present moment. The light and love within me bows to that light and love within you. Namaste, my friends. Thank you so much, as always, practicing with me and spending your precious time on yourself, really. Thank yourself. It is such a joyous thing to give yourself some time in the day, because we are very conditioned to believe that we should give to everyone out there. This idea of not being selfish. And it's very hard sometimes to step back and really dedicate something to yourself. So thank you for doing that. And I wish you well as you go into your day or as you go to bed, whatever you may be doing now. And I will see you again soon.